Hello everyone, and welcome to your first video in geometry. This is Miss Boardman, and I will be doing this on my iPad, so it'll be a little different. But as always, if you have questions, please email me. Stop the video if you're confused, rewind, whatever you need to do. So today we're going to do chapter 1, lesson 1, which is understanding points, lines, and planes. So this is like the very beginning and the basic information that you'll use throughout the entire chapter, as well as the whole course. Okay, so our first vocabulary word is point. So point just names a location. It has no size, but it is represented by a dot. So for example, over here you see this dot right here and the P next to it. Okay, so the way you would name that is point P. Another way you can name it is you just put a dot and you can put B. So that would be point B. Okay, so you just put a point and name it with a letter. Again, it has no size, it's just a location. Next, we have a line. A line is a straight path that has no thickness and extends forever. Okay, so we're not going to show that it extends forever. We're just going to show that by these little arrows over here. So there's a few ways you can name it. You can name it with the 2 points on the line, so either line XY or YX, or with its naming letter, which is this cursive L right here. Okay, so not all lines will have naming letters, so you'll see me normally name them with just 2 points. Next, we have what's called a plane. So a plane is a flat surface that, again, has no thickness and extends forever. So you'll represent it by this four-sided figure, but it technically extends forever in every direction. There are a few ways you can name it. You can name it by its naming letter, this R right here, or you name it with 3 points that are not on a line. So for example, A, C, and B are not on a line, so you can name this plane A, B, C, A, C, B, kind of however you want to with those 3 letters. However, if I drew a plane over here and I had a line and there were 3 points on this line, let's say X, Y, and Z, I could not name this plane X, Y, Z. Okay, that is not a thing. It needs to be 3 points that are not in a line. Next, we have a segment. So a segment is a part of a line consisting of 2 points and all the points in between. So if you notice over here, there are no arrows on the ends. Okay, it just ends at both of these points. So the way that you name it is with its endpoint. So either with segment AB or BA. And then notice at the top here, you just have a segment bar on top. Up here, we had the segment bar with 2 arrows. So that's how you're going to know whether you're talking about a line or a segment, is the arrows. Okay, so make sure you recognize the difference between this and that. All right. So again, a segment has 2 endpoints. The endpoints are just going to be the point at the end of a segment or the starting point of a ray, and we'll get to that in a second. You just name them with the capital letters, so this would be endpoint C, this would be endpoint D. Finally, we have what's called a ray. So a ray is just a part of a line. So it starts at an endpoint and it extends forever in one direction. The biggest thing you need to know is how to name this. Whether your ray is going from left to right or from right to left, you're still going to name it this way. Okay, so for example, even if I have this ray here that says, this is, let's say, K, L, this is still KL with your arrow pointing to the right. If I flip it and I go K, L that way, it is still named KL with the arrow to the right. All right. Notice that the arrow is only on the right side. You do not have an arrow on the left side. That's how you know the difference between ray, a line, and a segment. Finally, we have what's called opposite rays. So these are 2 rays that have a common endpoint and form a line. So the common endpoint here is E. And so we have ray EF and EG, okay? But they both meet at this E. you're going to name them whether they're going to the left or the right with the endpoint first. Just like up here, how we named it RS, not SR, and we named this KL, not LK. All right? Finally, we have some postulates. So postulates are just going to be kind of rules in geometry. We'll have plenty of them. You do not need to know these numbers, so don't worry about those. You just kind of need to know what these mean. So the first postulate says that through any 2 points, there is exactly one line. So if I draw 2 points anywhere on my paper, there's only one line that goes through them. There are not going to be multiple lines that go through them. There are through any three non-collinear, so this word we will get to in a second, 3 non-collinear points, there's exactly one plane, and then through 2 points lie on a plane, then the line containing those points lies on the plane. So these last two aren't as important as the first one, okay? But let's get into what non-collinear, collinear, and all that stuff means. Collinear means points that lie on the same line. So for example, up here, X and Y are collinear. Down here, A, B, and C are not collinear because they do not lie on the same line. Okay, so X and Y are collinear. A, B, and C are not collinear. Coplanar are just points that lie on the same plane. And then postulate and theorem. A postulate's an accepted statement without proof. A theorem, which we'll get into, is a statement that has to be proven. We'll get into theorems and postulates a lot. So for right now, just remember that a postulate does not have to be proven. All right, so let's actually get into this. So in example 1, we want to figure out what 2 other ways to name AB. So here is my AB, and we want to name it 2 other ways. So one way you can name it is just flip that line and name it the backwards. So BA. And again, because it's a line, you draw both arrows. Another way you can name it is because it extends forever all the way down here, we can use this letter F. So let's name it FA. You could have also named it FB, BF, AF. There's all sorts of ways, okay? But just notice that this whole line extends. Now, another way you can name it, I know it only says 2, but another way you can name it is with this naming letter. So you could name it line L, okay? So any way that I just named it is an accurate way to name that line. What are 2 ways to name plane Q? In order to name plane Q, we need either 3 points that do not lie on the line or another naming letter. Well, because they use the naming letter, I cannot use any other one. So let's do it with 3 points that do not lie on a line. So we will name it plane A, D, C. Notice I included this C in order to make it not 3 points that lie on a line. You can use 2 collinear points, but then you have to include 1 point that does not lie in that line. So you can name it A, D, C. Now, notice I did not use E. If I used E, that would not be an accurate way to name a plane. Okay, you cannot name it using these 3 letters, EAD. You have to include that C. So another way I could name it is, let's say, EAC. So another way is plane EAC. All right, next it's asking for the names of 3 collinear points. So remember, these are points that lie on the same line. So let's just use those ones I was just talking about. E, A, and D all lie on this single line, so that means they're collinear. So we can put E, A, and D. Again, you can name points using just capital letters, or you can write the word point. Next, it says, what are the names of 3 coplanar points? So these are 3 points that lie on the same plane. So if you want to just come up here and use 3 of these points that you use to name a plane, those have to be coplanar. So we'll just say A, D, C. So you could have used any combination of D, A, E, and C. This point right here, or this letter right here, M, is not a point. There's 2 ways I know that. First of all, there is no dot next to it. And second of all, it's lowercase. Points are going to be uppercase. Also with Q, there is no dot next to it. That is a naming letter, so you cannot use that. Finally, B and F are technically off of the plane because they're outside of this figure, so you cannot use them either. So again, it has to be on the plane in order to use it. Next question says to name 4 segments. So segments can be a part of a line. So for example, this right here is a segment as long as I name it like this, A, D with a segment bar on top. If I draw that segment bar on top, that is telling me that I'm only talking about a segment. I'm not talking about the whole line. Okay, so another segment we could do is E, A, this part right here. Another segment would be A, B. And then let's say F all the way to B, just this part. Now I do understand there are plenty of other segments you could name. That's just 4. Now we're going to name some rays. So same idea, a ray can be part of a line as long as you name it correctly. So let's say A to E is a ray. Remember, you're always going to start with your end point and then end with the point that is the ray is going through. So the way I would name that ray would be AE. Let me make it less. AE. And then you draw from your endpoint and do your arrow to the right. So there's one ray. Let's name another one. Let's say A to F. Again, my endpoint is A. The ray is going through F, so I write it as such. Let's do B to F. Let's make my endpoint B. So I'm going to put B first. It goes through F, and my arrow points to the right. And finally, let's actually do D to E. I do understand it goes through A, but I'm just going to skip it. You can do that. So let's name this DE with your arrow pointing to the right. You could have named that DA. That's completely fine as well. All right. So there's 4 rays. Finally, it says to name a pair of opposite rays. So remember, opposite rays are just 2 rays that go in opposite directions, creating a line. So let's locate a line. Right here is a line. The common endpoint between these 2 is this A. So one ray is going to be A through D. So I write A, D with my arrow pointing to the right. And A to E. Again, my common endpoint is A with my arrow pointing to the right. All right, the final question is asking what this dotted line means. What that dotted line means is that is behind the plane. So if you think about the piece of paper you're writing on, if you took your pencil and you put it through the paper, you wouldn't be able to see the back of that pencil. However, you know it's there. So that's what that dotted line means, is that the line is behind the plane. All right. So that's what that means, is that the line is behind the plane. So whenever you see dotted things, and you'll see that when we get into shapes, is that that means it's still there. It's just behind what you would normally see if it was a 3D figure. All right, so what I want you guys to do now is go ahead and pause the video, work on this on your own, and then come back and watch the rest of the video. All right, so the first one is what other ways are there to name EF. So let's say we can name it FE. We can use this naming letter, so line N. And we can include B, so let's say EB or BF. And then if you flipped any of those, that's fine as well. Next, it says, what are 2 ways to name plane C? Well, they use the naming letter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use 3 non-collinear points. So let's name it plane EBG and plane BFG. Again, if you use any combination of E, B, F, and G, G must be in your name. If G is not in the name of your plane, it is incorrect. You cannot name this plane E, B, F. You have to use this G in order for it to be non-collinear. Number 3 says name 3 collinear points. So 3 points that are in a line is E, F, and B. So points E, F, and B. And finally, it's asking for 4 coplanar points. So those are 4 points on a plane. Remember, N and C are not points. So your only 4 coplanar points are B, F, and G. If you have questions, go ahead and write them down, and then I will be happy to answer them the next time we WebEx. All right, last thing is going to be the intersection of lines and planes. So if 2 lines intersect, then they intersect in exactly 1 point. Okay, so if 2 lines intersect, they intersect at exactly 1 point. If 2 planes intersect, they intersect at exactly 1 line. Okay, so lines intersect at a point. Planes intersect at a line. Okay, so looking here, we have these planes, the blue one and the orange one, and then we have these 2 lines, this line and this line. So it says name the intersection of the planes. So since we're talking about planes, they intersect at a line. So the intersection of my planes is at this line right here. So there, again, as you know now, there's a few ways to name this. You can name it BD or DB. You can include C, or BC, or CB, or you can include D, so CD or DC. So there's a few ways you can name that line. Next, it's asking for us to name the intersection of the lines. And since we're talking about lines, your lines intersect at exactly 1 point. So this line and this line intersect exactly at this point right here, point C. And there's your first video. So go ahead and make sure you have any questions written down. If you need any immediate help, go ahead and email me. Otherwise, thank you for watching.